I am Shusara Kona Kumara. Welcome to Satsang. You are beginningless. You are endless. You are divine.
So happy to be with you again tonight for Satsang. I'm ready to get going, so let's take a nice deep breath and I will clear the space. Mother, Father, God that I am, through the great central sun hierarchy, through the office of the Christ and the order of Melchizedek, I call upon Archangel Michael to bring the sapphire blue ray. Cut away, cut away, cut away anything in all of our four lower bodies not emanating directly from our I am presence. I now call on Archangel Zachiel, keeper of the violet flame. Blaze, blaze, blaze the violet flame through all of our four lower vehicles. Transmute, transmute, transmute all the psychic debris Michael has cut free. I now bring forth the invincible ring past naught and the mirror blue light of invisibility to completely surround each of us. And I call forth a shaft of pure Christ light, one to surround each one of us, and I ask that they all be brought to the center of the earth where I call on Archangel Gabriel to seal them. And I ask that the legions of Michael completely surround each tube of light. And now I ask that our vibrations be raised high above the psychic and astral worlds to the highest realm of illumined truth we each can attain at this time. Now, Mother, Father, God, we place ourselves in service to you and to humanity, and I place myself in service to all those listening tonight. We ask that only that which is direct from you be permitted into our perceptions and that all else of the lower mind be kept out. And we ask that only that which is direct from you be permitted through us. And because we have asked this, we consider it so. So be it. All right, come on back to me. I crack myself up every time I do that with the brass bowl because I have to lean back to do this in front of the mic. So I'm on this, like, got this balancing act going on as I'm trying to not have it fall out of my hand. It's funny. All right. Well, welcome to, post-election, post-apocalypse. And I think this is so cool. I wasn't able to be with everyone last week for a live program, so I'm going to say it now. And I think it's so apropos that PLN and I are sitting here together, just the two of us, for probably about the first time since we've been in this office. Yeah. And we celebrated between our last program live show and tonight our 3-year anniversary on BBS. And it started with just me and PLN sitting together in my office at home and doing these programs. And shocking, it was on PLN's birthday too when our very first one. And so it's really cool to know 3 years have passed. We're still plugging along here on BBS. It's awesome. So leave us comments or something on our page, ask questions anytime you want, and I'll do my best to answer them. I'm always happy to field people's questions. We don't really take them on air so much. We just really don't. It seems like something takes over and I am talking and it just does its thing. So I never really think to stop and say we'd take calls. But anytime you want, you can always leave us some kind of feedback, I'm sure, on our BBS page. Yeah. If you're on BBS and you go to Satsang with Shusara, I'm sure that you can leave us messages. So, yeah. Okay, so we had that whole supermoon thing and the election, and energies are running high. And I was telling our people here for our session beforehand, I had this man felt affronted by me in traffic today, apparently, and he followed me to where I was going and got out of his car and reamed me out in a parking lot. In a parking lot. So, if you've been experiencing some of that wherever you're at, then I'm not surprised. People are kind of just starting to lose it, you know. So you're listening to this program. You're one of those who can do your best better than most, I'm sure, and keeping your cool and staying centered in the middle of the craziness. And that's partially what we're here to do. Show the masses that there is another way to be. We aren't destined to be crazy, right? Which the ego, of course, is completely crazy. But that is not your destiny. That's not who we are. It's an interesting thing. I'm thinking about the song that I chose for tonight for our little meditation at the end, and I love the song. So I found one that's a little more current version, and was thinking of the relationship between that song and this work that we do. And I think I don't want to kind of spoil the surprise for the song. However, it's very relatable to me from where I sit as someone who has walked this path, to know that in all of the time that we spend kind of digging psychologically and looking at things from, we're in this polarized reality. So we learn to look at things from both sides and see what is there to be seen, knowing that we hold one as true consciously, and then the other side, of course, is equally true, but it's hidden from us in the unconscious. And even, this is really interesting. It's very interesting, Pelian, I have to say, that we had the whole conversation that we had today during session, because it's completely in alignment with the song I chose tonight and what I'm saying right now. So see if you catch it while I'm talking about it. As we do this and we start looking and uncovering the aspects that have been hidden, it can seem as though, on one level, it does seem as though we understand more, like, oh, I get that. That's why I do that. But does it show you any more of who you are? Turn your mic on so you can talk to me. If not, I'm just asking myself questions all night.
Okay, so you're asking, just because I see why I get something, does it really show me? You want to know, does it show me like why I actually really did it?
Does it show you who you are?
Oh. No.
Oh, okay. So that's beautiful. That's what I was looking for. Good answer. So Pelian gets the gold star tonight. So that was the point of something that came up during the session. I was saying to the people here, there's this work that we do very, very specifically at the Kumara Center. It's the work that was given to me by my guide, and it's the path I traveled included this. And it's a big component in the beginning. And we call it processing work. It is very psychological work. It's meant to create literally an inroad into consciousness. Okay, so remember everything that I've ever told you on this program, if you've been listening at all, is that, just as I said a few minutes ago, this world is polarized, right? Which means both sides of every pair of opposites is here. What happens is the personality, the ego, takes on one side of the pairs of opposites as its truth, the things that it believes itself to be, the things that aligns itself with. It takes that on in a very conscious way. Well, the other side that it's repulsed by, the opposite to the thing it thinks it is, it's repulsed by. So it actually gets pushed into the level that is hidden from it. Okay. So terminology wise, I don't know if that's the subconscious, the unconscious. I call it the unconscious because what I do know is it's really hard to get to and it remains hidden. You can have it pop up and right in front of someone's face completely and they won't be able to see it. It is that hidden. And I've watched that with my students over and over again. The exact thing that they're trying to find, when it comes at them in the outside world and they're presented with it, they can't even see it. It's crazy. So in this work, this is what happens. We use these certain techniques to get in there and to train the mind to start relaxing itself enough to allow itself to start really looking at what has created the level of perception that you function from in your world. And there's a lot that goes into, why, how it gets imprinted, this, that, and the other thing. But the big chunk is that, right? When we use this work called processing work in conjunction with meditation and contemplation to get in and to get in deeper and deeper and deeper into the consciousness itself and everything that has kind of enslaved it in this space where you think that you're this personality and the body and all of it. The thing with that, though, is that even that has an ending point. And I've heard other teachers out there, I don't know, I was taught to call it processing because that's what it is. You walk through this process. I don't know out in the world when you hear people say processing what that means for them. I don't know because I've heard that, but I don't know what that means. But I have heard other spiritual teachers say that processing work isn't necessary. And I'm sure for some it's not. I will say in my own experience, the things that I uncovered along the way, I honestly, after having walked through them, and Peelian, you can speak to this too, is I don't know how on earth I ever would have seen what I saw if it wasn't for the particular way that we go in and do that work. I just can't even imagine how it ever would have come forward because I've uncovered things that were so locked up, and it really took a huge amount of work to get in there and to uncover it. And it was over a course of time, not like just, something happens and boom, I sit down and 5 minutes later I pulled it out of the unconscious. That's not how it works at all. Is that accurate for you as well?
Yes. And it's actually even brought up memories that I've blocked out as I'm doing it.
Yeah. Yep. And it will do that. It's really interesting that whatever, and I remember my guide telling me very early on, because I would say, I don't remember being a child really until I was probably about, I'm guessing 5 to 7, somewhere in there. Like I have more memories, but way back, I'm like, I don't remember any of that. And she always said, don't worry about it. Anything that's needed in the moment will come forward. And it's not yours to go back and find. Just know that it'll come forward. And that was my experience as well, that there were certain things that happened where it was a pivotal moment. And because of the emotional pain that was attached to it, I had just shoved it. And so had completely forgotten that it ever happened until it came up in relation, because the situation that I was in, back when I was doing whatever that work was, had it was basically the repetition of the same thing, different situation, different person or place or whatever, but the basis of it was the same. And then boom, it just popped forward and it was like, oh my gosh, it's amazing. And it is amazing how that works. So there are teachers who will say it's unnecessary. I'm not going to disagree, other than to say in my experience, I can't imagine doing the level of work that we do here without it, and only utilizing, meditation. Because meditation, it's so easy for meditation to become a trap for people. They get to places that feel very good, and then they get stuck there, and then they're always chasing the feel good. And, we're here to see through all of that as well. So anyhow, to get back to my point, that psychological level work, while it's so important, is just kind of a jumping off point into greater and greater levels of expansion and awareness. And those come not from you doing psychological work, but from you walking out in your life all of the understandings that you came into through all of that work. So in conjunction with what you've been taught by your guide, certain truths that are beyond this realm of existence. You have those that are given to you. You've done very deep work, and now the job and the unfolding comes from you living your life, right? And then utilizing all the aspects of your life and all the things that are going on as your opportunities to continue to expand and come into greater levels of awareness through them, or to do the opposite, to literally kind of backpedal or backtrack on your journey. And everyone needs to have an understanding that there is no, there's no resting place in the universe. So if you look at it from a purely like physics related place and you look at our universe, is there anything stationary in space? No, right? And that, I think scientists even would say space itself is expanding. So when we look at, I get so frustrated at one point because the kids and my kids in school were all learning about the solar system and that all our planets revolve around our sun, as if our sun just sits in one place. And I was trying to explain to them, of course they were young, it was a little interesting to try to do it, but I said, you have to understand the sun is moving too, and we're all trailing behind it, spiraling around that sun, moving together as one big unit. But nothing stays in the same place. And wherever we were, and people would be like, well, so in a whole year you've come full circle, as if you go back to where you've been. But that's impossible because we've moved further, and it's a spiraling. The thing that I think is so beautiful about that is if you've done any reading of Jung, his psychology, brilliant man, he, in explaining consciousness, explained it exactly the same way. It's an expansive kind of a spiraling, so that you come back from one moment to go full circle to come back again, but you come back again from a more expanded place. And that is so accurate. And I can speak to that very personally in my own journey, that I've had those moments over and over where it literally have come full circle back to an understanding where in a moment it was like everything just blew out, and now it was a greater sense of understanding that was experiential. So your physical universe is doing the same thing. It's moving, and yeah, we may go full circle around the sun, but when we come back to that point, we've moved forward. So you can't ever go back to the same space of space, right? We're always moving forward. And that's what you're meant to do as well. And everything here is placed here to give you that opportunity to continually move forward in your understanding, to continually move forward in your evolution. That's the whole point. At one point, seemingly consciousness has gotten stuck in this belief that it's a separate being, right? And it's experiencing this reality that seems to be working overtime to keep it stuck in the space where it believes it's separate. But when seen as, which could seem to many people as a very evil thing, you hear that all the time. Like, where's God in all of this? Why does God allow this to happen to people? And what, all that stuff. And I'm going to challenge you to look at it from a completely different vantage point. I'm going to challenge you to look at it as if it's all love, right? What if that thing that is your demon is only there to help you experience greater love, right? What if that's true? And if you just sit with that, just that one little piece, and you can say, wow, like what would that mean for me in my life? If all of those things that I can't stand are the greatest treasures that I've been given, that I've brought to myself, to help in my own evolution, how can you look at life the same way again ever? Right? Ever. And it's only an unconscious ego that continues to just constantly see all of these things that are out of alignment with what the way it likes to be as bad things. Someone who walks consciously in the world doesn't see anything as a bad thing. Right? We were just talking about that very briefly at the end of our session concerning what happened with the election. I've got some people here who are really struggling with all the judgment that's wanting to come up concerning our president-elect. And I said, it doesn't matter if the person is the Antichrist. That'll bring up red flags in people. But I said, what's the purpose of the Antichrist? Right? To be there to bring you closer to the Christ, right? And if you can just see that. So I said, what if that's the greatest gift? Because what if he is, right? What if he's going to mess it up so bad? And all you can focus on is how bad it's going to get. And my challenge would be to swing that around and look at it as if, wow, what an opportunity to get there even faster, right? To get to that place that we all want to be. All of those diehard, Bernie fans out there, right? You saw the big picture, and it was beautiful. And he wasn't going to be allowed to do it yet. The timing just wasn't going to happen. So maybe that's what has to play out. Maybe this man has to come into office and a whole bunch of stuff has to go down that isn't going to look good on the outside, and it's going to wake a lot of people up, right? Now, I pray that's not the case. My prayer is that he is lifted in grace and completely supported so that he can walk out this position that he's been given to the, very, very best of his ability, and that it will be, what everyone hopes it can be. That's my prayer. Of course. Why would we want anything else for the person that we've just put into one of the most important positions in the entire planet? Why would we want that person to fail? That doesn't make a bit of sense. All right? It doesn't. It just doesn't. It's all ego. It's all ego that says, he's a this and a that and the other, and I hope he bombs. Well, if he bombs, that's not necessarily going to play out so great for you in your own life either. So think about that. Get a little perspective, right? A little broader perspective. That's the whole point. Kind of back up, see a bigger picture. So the thing is that you can do work from this place where you're looking at who I am, right? And constantly move into spaces where you're seeing, oh, wow, like I really am both sides. And Pielian, you spoke about that earlier, something that was moving in your own life. And she said it brought up her patterning that would have said, I'm a failure. And then what she witnessed was like, no, I'm not, and all this other stuff. And I kind of had to kind of help her course correct a little bit there. Not that it's a bad thing to go to recognize, no, I'm not a failure, but you are a failure in some degree, right? And it's only the ego that's going to run from that. It's going to be like, no, I don't want to, I don't want to be a failure. It's like, but you can't help it, right? Because it's there. And if it's not presenting as failure here in this physical body that you're carrying and all the actions well, guess what? It's showing up as failure in a lot of people out there. And if you think they're separate from you, you're wrong. It's all you. So you are seeing it, right? You're just afraid to identify with it. And what I'm telling you is you're going to have to. On some level, you have to be able to identify with all those things you're afraid of being from a very powerful place where you really do own it. Because once you've looked at both sides and then gone further and truly owned both sides, now you've got the opportunity to see through the whole thing. And that's where the magic happens, right? So people can get in that space and see both sides, but then they just stay stuck there. And what I'm saying is you can see it, but it's still not showing you who you are. It's not showing you experientially what you are either, right? Because when you own both, you can get stuck there. The point is to go beyond and to recognize that in highest truth, you can't be either, right? How do you take God and label it with anything? As soon as you do, you've limited it. And what are some of the terms that we utilize when we speak of the divine, right? That the divine is what? Omniscient, omnipotent, like these terms, right? All knowing, all powerful, all seeing, all, right? It's always all something. All that is. Yeah. So as soon as we say we're going to limit that to successful or failure, oh, give me a break. Right? I don't think so. Go ahead.
I think something just clicked for me. So you just said that, wait, what did you just say? Click. It was like click, and I saw one thing, and then it was like, well, what just led to that? You were talking about the point isn't to see that you're both. That's not the main point. And then you said the point was to see that you're really neither. And then it clicked for me that that's the whole reason we say that you have to walk it out. Because we do the whole processing work, right? And it's that you get to see that you really are both. You get to see that there's times where you are both. And then when you actually walk it out, that's when you kind of liberate yourself from either one of them.
Yeah, that's when you have the opportunity to, absolutely, right? But remember what's intimately tied to all of it is resistance, right? Because if
okay, all right.
Yay. Okay. Ooh, she's having a moment. That's beautiful. What's tied to all of it from the space of the ego is resistance and attachment. And they are the same thing. Do you see? Attachment and resistance are the same thing. They're opposites, but they are the same thing. Mm-hmm. If you're resisting one, it means you're attached to the other. And if you're attached to one, you're resisting the other. Same thing. So, and that's beautiful right there. Write that down. Those of you listening at home, write that down. Two sides of the same coin. So when you can move into a space where you are finally capable of truly owning both sides of something. So if you're peeling on it was failure, success. And she can now look objectively at her life, right? And come up with all kinds of examples of where she has been a failure, where she has failed, and all kinds of examples of where she has succeeded as well. And in that is this beautiful chance to see through pairs of opposites, to see through the concept that we're holding in place of what one is versus what the other is, because it's all purely conceptual, right? I was saying to the group earlier, based on where we sit, because what she was talking about was a financial thing. And I said, well, of course, from where we sit in our society, you would look at what you're saying and say, well, you failed. You were a failure, because this is how we view that. However, if you were in a different part of the world and they looked at you and they said, well, look at that woman. She's working 60 hours a week and she never spends time with her children. And she's got all this money that she's socking away for her retirement, but she isn't enjoying, any of her own life right now. They would look at her and say she's a failure, and look at someone else who is embracing life and living it in the moment and not concerned about their 401k. They would see them as a success, right? So it's all about how we've been programmed to perceive whatever the concepts are behind each pair of opposites. So in seeing, wow, I am both. I truly am. Now is the brilliant moment where you can go, okay, I can be both, and be perfectly okay with being both, right? It's one thing to just say, I can see that I'm both and I own that. It's another thing to be okay with being both. You understand? I hope all of you listening really get that. It's a completely different thing, because that means you've dropped your attachment to one and your resistance to the other. You can't do one without the other. You can't drop your attachment and hold on to resistance. It doesn't work like that. Or drop resistance and hold on to attachment. It's all or nothing, right? So now she can move forward, and this is what she was saying. She felt like what she needed to do now is this thing has been placed in front of her that is challenging, certainly from a financial place. And she said, I feel like what I really need to do is just walk it out. And I said, yeah, you're going to walk it out from the highest level of your understanding. You're going to just do your absolute best to walk that out without being in any judgment about the outcome, what it looks like at the end of it, right? All you can do is just do your best to stay conscious and hold the understandings that you do have in place, and do your best to just walk it out in the world, right? And allow the experience itself to continue to guide you, to continue to teach you, to bring you into greater levels of experiential wisdom. That's the journey, right? And that doesn't require you to go sit in an ashram. And it doesn't require you to sit 4 hours a day in meditation. All it requires you to do is to be conscious and live your life. That's why I love my work so much, and the work that we bring to people who are called to do it, is because it doesn't require anything of you other than you live your life, right? And you kind of can't help doing that. It's not all kinds of rules and regulations, and you have to do this and you have to do that. And if you do this, it's good. And if you do that, it's bad. No, it's none of it. It's live your life. I'm going to give you understandings, and you take them and you do your very best to just kind of hold true to them and walk them out, even when they don't feel comfortable yet, because they won't. They're in opposition to what the ego's used to. They won't feel comfortable initially. But that's the point. As you walk them out, right? So PLN has this story going that wants to run that says, I'm a failure. As she continues to walk this out and continues to just not pay any attention to the voice that says I'm a failure, and just keeps doing what she needs to do, all of that's just going to naturally fall away. Right? It just I always say, the ego, the mind itself, suffers from neglect. Right? That's the thing that dissolves it out. Nothing pays attention to it anymore, right? It's not conscious. The ego is not conscious. It has no beingness of itself that has any kind of power at all. It's a program, right? So the program only runs when there's something running it. Understand? And if your consciousness is not the thing that's engaging the program doesn't exist. See? That's the point. Not to change it, just to see through it. So seeing things is great, but it doesn't give you any greater understanding of what it is, who it is, especially when you bring it to yourself. And this in the song in particular, it looks at that from the space of love and life. And it's so true. You don't know what life is. No matter how much you pick it apart psychologically, you don't know anything about life until you live it. Live it, right? Because from the space of the ego, you're not living it. The ego isn't even conscious. It's running its programming every day thinking it's living a life. It's not. It's not. And as far as love goes, you can pick that apart as much as you want to, but you never know love until you are love. You don't know life until you are life. And that's the point. And what a beautiful understanding to come to, like in this particular song we're going to use, that like you really don't know. You don't know. to come to the thing, you're like, wow, I've like done all this work and I still don't know. It's beautiful. It's fabulous. Because the ego never will. It just never will. It can't. Right? The ego's too afraid to jump into the void, and it can't jump the chasm, and it knows that. So it works overtime to just stay enmeshed in everything that it's been trained to do. And that's fine. Let it. It's fine. It's fine. Because you aren't that. You aren't an ego. You aren't. And that's like the great journey, is that there's this space where now you've seen enough, right? You've seen all the components. You've seen everything that creates this reality. You've seen how it gets perpetuated by the mind. You see how the mind creates time, how all the beliefs that we hold literally are creating this projection that you call your outer world. Now, the point is to start living from a different space, right? And in doing so, you will move into greater and greater experiences that will show you over and over again on ever deepening levels just how unreal this world is. Right? That's the point. That's where the magic happens, right? That's where you hear from so many in books and other things, all these sages and great masters, whatever we want to call them, we'll speak of how beautiful, how magical this world is, this life is. And it is, right? It is transcendently beautiful here. And you can have these moments where your experience in the same spot with another person, what you experience can be pure heaven. Truly, you can be sitting next to a person and they're in the middle of hell, right? And it's all about your perception. And it's all right here, right now. I had a profound moment with that at one point where the understanding just came over me. Absolutely, just it felt like something literally just dropped over me, and I felt it more than I thought it, although words did come, and it was that heaven is right here, right now, and it is. It's just a matter of being able to perceive it, right? Because let's face it, you could be in, one of the most beautiful places in the world. So pick your beautiful place in the world, right? You choose. And wherever that is for you, if you were in that space, but you had just had a huge fight with your significant other and decided to break up in that moment, I don't think you'd be feeling like you were in heaven, would you? Because your emotional state dictates how you are perceiving everything. Okay, so what I'm here to say is you aren't your emotional states, right? They aren't you. Emotional states are only dictated by the concepts that the ego is tied to, the beliefs that it holds on to. And of course, in the world of opposites, whatever it is you believe, the opposite has to come to you because it's giving you the opportunity, remember? Now, it's not there to make you miserable. The world is not there to make you miserable. It's trying to do the exact opposite if you would just wake up and pay attention. It's giving you that thing that you're repulsed by because it's going, take another look. You're missing it. There's something else here, but you're not paying attention. You're so engaged in trying to push it away that you aren't paying attention to what's actually here in front of you, right? And that's the point. What do you do with it when everything starts to fall apart, right? Scramble to fix it or scramble to see through all of it. You are only so effective in the world when you're functioning from patterned states of consciousness. Because what happens is underneath your conscious awareness, the subconscious level is always running and functioning to set up the exact things that you're trying to run away from. That's its job. That's what it does. So literally, on a very deep level, the ego is constantly undergoing steps of self-sabotage all the time. All the time. To the point where one of our people at our session earlier was talking about being in this space where all of a sudden these thoughts were just coming in completely out of nowhere. It just completely threw her into a downward spiral that she could not get out of. And I said, well, of course they did, right? Because and I'm going to speak to you from a scientific place. If you look at from a biochemical place in the brain, which is attached to as soon as thought is identified with, right, then emotions come out of the identification. Thought always precedes emotion. Always, always, always. It has to, because it's the thought that's identified with that actually creates emotion. So something happens, thought is identified with, emotion comes. Based on the state of emotion, the state of mind, certain chemicals get released from the brain and they run through the body. And then they dock into cells at these places called receptor sites. And when they dock in, the receptor site takes the chemical compound in, and then it releases endorphins into the system. And when the endorphins release, that's when you feel better. So you all understand what endorphins are, right? So when people get really upset, and then it corresponds with them taking some kind of action. So the docking takes place when someone yells back at someone or slams the door or, stomps out of a room and jumps in their car and peels away. Those actions happen at that same time. So you end up actually feeling better. Now, it doesn't mean you feel happy. That's not the same thing. But it gets you out of the state of victimization you were in, and it swings you out of that. But here's the cool thing. In the cell itself, when these chemicals move through, the cell reserves a little bit of the chemical. Cells are specific as far as holding the whichever certain chemicals they are, but they'll reserve it. And in a time where, now remember that the patterned consciousness, the ego itself, it's an addict. It's an addict to, in the body, it's an addict to the chemical compounds, because the ego is an addict to the states of mind. You understand? So that comes first. States in the body. What do I say to you? The body is a reflection of the state of consciousness, right? So state of consciousness identified as ego is addicted to states of mind, right? You're with me? Yeah. In that addiction to states of mind, the body mirrors it with an addiction to the chemicals that get released when identification occurs in the states of mind, right? So you see that they mirror each other. Good. So now let's say you've got someone who's doing very deep inner work and they've seen a lot, and they're going through a space where they've really jumped up a level, and now they've kind of plateaued a bit, and everything's just good, right? Because right now their awareness is very heightened, and they're seeing the patterning playing out. So they're not identifying with it. They're just very objective in their world. Beautiful. Now something's going to happen that's going to trip them up. Why? Because it has to. The cell will literally pull some of that chemical that it's reserved out and release it, engage it, and it literally will create the mind. It'll be like you get a flash of, let's say you had the misfortune of walking in on your husband when he was cheating with another woman. Okay. That's a visual you'd never forget. So let's say that kind of patterning has stopped. because you ended it with your husband, you got divorced, and you started a new relationship that has been really beautiful and everything's been great. So something can happen, and in a moment, if something occurs that has any resemblance of reminding you of that, let's say all of a sudden that picture of your husband with the other woman comes up in your mind, you see it, right? And now, boom, you're right back in it. And just that alone is enough to re-engage the patterning so that it creates that chemical compound to rush from the brain again and flood the body, because it's addicted and it needs its fix. And that's why it happens. The body literally will do that, which is absolutely fascinating. If you're, if you're into science at all, it is fascinating that that does that. So it shows you the connection, right? And that's why when we say over and over again that we're not here to change anything, we're here to see through it. Now you can understand a little more of why, right? To change it means I believe it's true and it needs to change. In changing it, we aren't doing anything to make it less real, are we? No. We're holding it as real. It has to be real if we want to change it, doesn't it? And what I'm challenging you to do is to start seeing everything as none of it is real. Not on the positive side, not on the negative side. Like none of it is real. And all we need to do is see through what's being presented here, right? In that, you have the power of literally disengaging from that whole construct that happens in the body, right? If you've seen through the whole thing, there is no personality in place anymore because there's no identification with anything, right? And seeing through it means I've already identified myself as everything. I see myself in Donald Trump, and I see myself in Hillary Clinton, and I see myself in the homeless guy in the street, and I see myself in the nun at the Catholic Church, and everything in between, right? And I can see it like, wow, that's just another aspect of me. That's really amazing. Okay. And so I see when, I'm a woman, Hillary Trump says something and he's misogynistic, and I look at it and go, that's me too. On some unconscious level, I hold that. On some unconscious level, I hold all of this. Wow. Now I can go, but in highest truth, I'm none of this. Right? I am pure awareness. If there is an I, it is that pure awareness. Pure awareness that has somehow gotten stuck in a space where it actually thinks itself to be something. And if I can see that and really see that, then all of the rest of it falls away. Now you can live your life. Now you can love unconditionally, fully, completely. Because there's nothing stopping it, right? What you are is love. But it's not human love. It's not what you think of as love. It's not an emotion. It's a beingness. Yeah. And when the personality isn't there to keep everything in check as far as what should be and shouldn't be and what I'm supposed to believe and not believe and what you're supposed to believe and not believe, and all that stuff falls away, the only thing that remains is what you are. And that's love and life. Now you can show up in the world. It doesn't matter that it's not real. You can be fully present here right now. It's all you got is right here, right now. So you can be fully present here and love every minute of it and watch all the drama and stay, kind of be you're kind of like the, what do they call those, buoys, you're a buoy out in the bay, bobbing along with the waves, no resistance, but it stays stationary, doesn't it? They don't go anywhere. No resistance. It just lets the water move it. That's fine. That's fine. But it doesn't go anywhere. The water doesn't pull it out of its where it's grounded at, right? The buoy has found its center. Yeah. And that's what holds it there, is its center. And the rest of it can do what it needs to do. What you see on the surface doesn't mean anything. It's what's going on down at the bottom, right? And so it's the same thing here. What you see on the surface, I know masters that if you were around them, you would think they were crazy. I know masters that if you were around them, you would be like, there's no way on earth. Why? Because our concept of what that means, you look at this being that doesn't have a personality and comes at you from any angle in any given moment, and you'd be like, that's awakened consciousness? Well, it's only because of what our concept here about awakened consciousness is that would lead us to do that. But I promise you, when the awakened consciousness is sitting at home with you, you totally get that. Totally get that. There's nothing to change here. Now, that doesn't mean from the space of being in the world. Let's look at, like, I had that. Did I tell this? I didn't tell this story, but I had a guy, like screaming at me in a parking lot tonight. And I just looked at him. I literally just kind of let him do his thing and just looked at him. And he got all kinds of flustered because I didn't respond back. Because, of course, that's what he was expecting, that I would probably either, I don't know, break into tears or scream at him. I don't know. And it just completely threw him that I didn't say anything to him. So you got all this stuff going on here. I can't even remember where I was going with that. What was it? There was a reason I brought that up. Do you know? Can you tell me where I started?
Well,
You can't. Oh, you should spend time with us. It's hysterical. You should see us afterward when I have to write the archive and I have no idea what I just said for the last hour. Interesting. Guy yelling at me in the parking lot.
I don't know. You just kind of switched to it.
I think I was going to say, like, that guy, he's not going anywhere anytime soon, right? You can just tell. And you all know people like that. They need more evolution time before it will be time for them to ascend, to move back into their natural state. And that's fine. No big deal. He needs more experience, and that's cool. So the point is that from that space, right, we're not going to be in resistance to, yes, we can work to, like, change things here. So don't get me wrong. I'm not saying you give up, you don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, so to speak. So you don't give up the world and give up functioning in it in order to be that, because that's just as polarized, right? Nothing needs to change, but it doesn't mean you can't be part of change here. You understand? I'm not about polarization, so we don't do it. Okay? We don't do it. You still show up in the world. You live by those three key things that I've talked about before. The first thing, not being in denial about what's going on, either in front of your own face in your own household or collectively on the planet. No denial, okay? Get real. Number two, no attachment, or excuse me, number two, do what you can to be of service, right? If you can help, so if it's in your own household, do what you can to help. If it's in your community, do what you can to help. Collectively, do what you can to help. Go in and to prayer, hold space, whatever it is. Number three, which is probably about the most important thing, is to let go of any attachment that you do have to the outcome. And we talked about that tonight, just the whole resistance and attachment thing, that all of that it just has to be seen through too. All of that is just held by ego. So if you can do those in the world, right, then you're living right. You're doing what you need to do here. Okay. No resistance to anything. Do what you need to do. Move through it. Always open to seeing where you could have done better, but no judgment or guilt or shame around where you fell short. None of that. Just stop. Don't worry about what you did 10 years ago. It never happened. Just let it go. Okay. We there? All right. So now we get to hear the song that I've been alluding to all night. It's a lovely song. I love Joni Mitchell. It's one of her songs, but we're not going to hear Joni tonight. We're hearing a more recent version. I hope you have a new appreciation for the song. I'm sure you all know it after everything I spoke about tonight. And I invite you to allow it to serve as a meditation tonight as we release anything that can be let go and that we may have worked through for you tonight. And I will assist you from here in doing that as well. So we won't be with you live next week because it is Thanksgiving. And I wish you all a very, very happy holiday with your families. And I hope you just remember, let all that judgment go for that day and just love them. I was saying that to someone, worried about going home and seeing people and it's always blah because it's family. And I'm like, you know what? Just love them. That's the only job you've got. Just love them. So I would say the same to all of you tonight as well. And I love all of you very, very deeply. We'll see you back here in a couple weeks. Good night.
Rows and flows of angel hair and ice cream castles in the air and feather canyons everywhere. I've looked at clouds that way, but now they only block the sun. They rain and snow on everyone. So many things I would have done, but clouds got in my way. I've looked at clouds from